Hi, everybody. My name is Jennifer. This is Metatron speaking. We're going to be talking today about ancestral healing. So, the reason I'm going to be talking to you about this is because Metatron has brought this up to me. Whenever Metatron wants to bring forward a specific topic, it's always timely. It always means that it's something that's relevant, something that's going on right now, something that's either part of the collective, or it might be something that is um, really prevalent amongst whoever is watching my videos. And so he's bringing this topic forward. So I'm going to start off by giving you some channeled information that he provided. You incarnated into your family for many purposes. There are no accidents. There is no such thing as random or chance. Many of you have come specifically to break ancestral curses for the family you incarnated into. Most of the family lines on Earth right now are overwhelmed with traumas that occurred long ago and have since perpetuated through the family line. It takes a soul who is very aware and dedicated to healing to recognize that they must do much better than those who have come before them. Here are some ways to know if you incarnated, if you came here to Earth to be the one from your family to finally end the ancestral trauma in your family line. So he gives me six different ways. One, you have recognized the suffering caused by older generations and you swore you would never be like them. Two, you are drawn to healing your emotional wounds and freeing yourself from the trauma you experienced. 3, you have always been the black sheep of the family. You could never fit in. 4, you've known in your heart that families don't have to be this way. They shouldn't be a place of suffering. 5, you've always known that your life has a bigger purpose and that you were meant to positively impact many others. And then the last one, 6, you've already started new ways of being that are different from your family of origin, new ways of communicating, new ways of expressing feelings, or prioritizing what really matters. These are some of the ways to confirm that you came to Earth to heal yourself from ancestral trauma, to protect future generations from having the same traumas, and to release your ancestors from the burdens that they have passed on generation after generation. When ancestral trauma is healed, it heals the present, but it also heals the past and the future. So let me talk to you just for a moment about this. I just want to make sure you kind of understand what he's coming from. So Metatron is saying that many people, probably many people who are watching this, which is why he's bringing this up, many people who are watching this video have in their soul contracts that they wanted to break ancestral trauma or resolve ancestral trauma. He called it like ancestral curses, but the way the energy of the word curses can be used as trauma as well. It's basically when he's saying ancestral curses, he's saying like there was a dark energy that perpetuated is what curse really means. So that's what he's saying. So and that is trauma. So there's a lot of situations where there were these really impactful traumas that happened really far down the line from your ancestors. So like think of what family you're in and it's like your great 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 great, 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 who knows how many great grandparents had some kind of trauma. And then it perpetuates down the line. And the reason this happens is there are certain there are certain traumas and there are certain experiences that the way we respond to them, it's so impactful, it's so intense that it actually changes that person's DNA. And we're not just talking, and we're not talking like etheric DNA, we're talking like physical DNA. It changes their physical DNA. And then that physical DNA, that change that has occurred, is what is literally passed down from family member to family member. And certain family members will express the trauma in obvious ways, and other family members won't. And I don't have information as to why some family members have it and some don't. If you think of your family, or if you think of somebody else's family, let's take like addiction, for example, right? So maybe there's something that happens in the past, an addiction is started down the family line, it modifies the DNA. Your parents, one of your parents, could have an addiction to something. And then if you look at yourself and you look at your siblings, maybe one of you has the addiction and the other one doesn't. It doesn't always express itself in every generation, every time. However, whether you express that trait or not, like let's say I have an alcoholic father, I am not an alcoholic. I have children. My children both have that genetic information that was passed down. It's up to a bunch of other circumstances whether or not they end up actually expressing that in their behavior. So this is what Metatron is talking about. So there are people who are watching this video who have incarnated in order to resolve or heal this trauma that's coming down generation after generation through the ancestral line. So it's almost like I don't even they keep showing me it and I don't know how to explain it properly, but it's like they're looking at the family line and they're like, yes, look at this trauma, look how long this has been here, look how many times this has gone through the generations. And you picked one of these and you were like, yeah, I'll fix that one. And so your soul chose to incarnate into that family, and that is part of the reason you chose that family. You knew who your parents were going to be, you knew who your siblings were going to be. These are all arrangements that are made before you incarnate. So there's no surprises. You're not like, oh my gosh, why did I choose this mother and this father? Like, you might think that very strongly in this lifetime. But on a soul level, if you had your memory back, you would recognize that every difficulty, every frustration, um, every dynamic between you and your family members, it's there for a reason. So sometimes we have family members that are there to be the supportive ones, the ones that are like the reprieve or the place that we can go to be ourselves and express ourselves. And we'll have, hopefully you have a family member like that. You might not. Many of us have lots of family members that are very, very different from us. And those differences have at times caused trauma. And so we have purposely put ourselves in these situations knowing the strength of our soul, knowing our capability to bring love into situations that are very loveless in order to transform them. So let me pull up my notes again. So let's talk about how to heal ancestral trauma, because let me see, how do you want to talk about this? Hold on, let me clear my energy because I don't like the answers I'm getting, which means I need to clear my energy. Okay. So to heal your ancestral trauma, I'm going to I'm going to talk about kind of two different approaches, and honestly, in a perfect world, I would recommend both. Um but we'll talk about that. We'll talk about what you can do. So one approach that you can take with this is we have an ancestral healing session. So if you and I'll talk about that session. If you want to do that session, that's that is great. That is amazing. I would not recommend that you only do the session. I would recommend that you do the session and you uh work on healing your own trauma, and I'll talk about that. So I'd recommend both of those together, or if your finances don't allow you to do the ancestral healing, or if it just doesn't resonate with you, then I'm going to encourage you to work on this healing on your own. So we'll talk about both of those. So for the ancestral healing session that we have, it's literally called Ancestral Healing. It's designed to basically liberate you and your family line from trauma that has um, perpetuated harm generation after generation. And so these are things that it's ancestral. So when we talk about like generational trauma is going to technically be, this is getting really technical, your great grandparents, your grandparents, your parents, and of course you and your siblings. Ancestrals go anything that's farther back than that. So this is traumas that you probably are not aware of because most of us don't have good contact with our family line that far back. So the what's going to take place during the ancestral healing session, if this is something that resonates with you, this is a session that Susan does. She works with not only your soul, she works with your ancestors. So she's literally calling in any of your ancestors that want to participate in this healing, which is wild. So she calls them in. And so for not only them, but also for you, she is releasing negative karma. She's lifting any like blocks or restrictions that have been placed upon like either you or any of you, restrictions that have been placed on any of you that can be released at that time. Any energetic attachments, energetic cords, essentially anything that's not in your greatest and highest good that is connected to ancestral information that's coming down. That's what she's working to clear, along with the trauma. She does the healing on it. She will identify the original trauma event because, and here's the thing, within the family line, you might have multiple original traumas. You might. You could. Susan is going to be shown through Metatron, she's going to be shown whatever trauma is the most relevant, the most important, the most impactful, whichever one he feels is best, that's what Susan's going to be shown. And that is what Susan's going to work on to heal. And so she'll be repairing the DNA as well as part of that energetic healing. So I'm going to put a link to this service in the description below if you're interested. The second part of this is working on aspects of your ancestral healing on your own. The best way to do this, since most of us don't really know what are the problems our ancestors have. And some of us, we don't know, okay, we recognize problems, but we're like, is this ancestral? Does this really go all the way back? Or is this like generational? when you're working on your own trauma, it really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's generational trauma or ancestral trauma. It's trauma. It's impacting you. So anything you can recognize that is painful caused by family members that's carrying through the line of your family, that's where you want to start. So you will first need to identify the unhealthy behaviors you see repeating throughout your family. So again, you might be seeing one specific unhealthy behavior, or there might, I mean, in most cases, to be honest, like if I think of my family, there's probably 4 or 5 prominent things going on there. Um, so these could be things like narcissism, gaslighting, shaming, emotional neglect, um, parents who have favorite children, grandparents who have favorite grandchildren, repressing emotions, denial, keeping secrets, sexual assault, physical abuse, verbal abuse. I mean, the list goes on and on. These are just some of the things that could be going on within your family that have, you see it demonstrated by your parents, and your parents demonstrate it because their parents were doing it, and it goes back however far. So, for some of you, researching about this, doing your own research on this, and figuring out, oh, okay, my father is a narcissist, and my mother would gaslight me, or my mother was an enabler, or like these labels. For some of us, researching and having these labels will help you with your healing process. Um, for other people, these labels might not matter at all. So just tune into that and see whether or not that feels helpful to you. If the labels don't feel helpful, don't even worry about them. Let's see. Focus on your feelings to help guide you with what might need healing. And so here's some questions that Metatron was posing. Are there regular interactions with your family members that leave you feeling fearful, inadequate, or like you are being put down? So this could be in the present tense if you have relationships with your family members now. This could be in the present tense, or this could be when you were a child or when you were a teenager. Are there certain family members that seek to dominate and control the others? Or are there others, are there some in your family that seek to just like avoid emotions, avoid conflict, avoid whatever? Take time to understand the behaviors that make you uncomfortable or that are hurtful, because those are the areas that need the healing. The second step in this is allowing yourself to grieve what you experienced. So this can include anger, sadness, disappointment, or most likely a mixture of a lot of different emotions. Work through these painful events one at a time. So I know this sounds wild, but if you try to lump like all of your childhood together and you try to heal it all in one shot, it might not feel complete, or it might feel difficult to reach all of that wounding. If you can go through, I know this sounds crazy, if you can go through your childhood and remember certain things, remember certain events that were really hurtful for you, and maybe even write it down. Okay, this is what happened. This is why it was hurtful. And then grieving that event, that's going to give you deeper healing if you can do it that way. And it sounds like it's a big task, but I'll tell you what, if you ask your guides for help, if you're like, hey, help me tune into the events from my childhood that are most important for me to remember right now. You might not be able to sit down all in one day and recall this. This is probably going to take you weeks or months, could take years. Um, Whatever comes up in your memory, just honor whatever memory it is. Even if you're like, wow, that was like such a dumb thing. Why do I care about that? It's like, no, there's all of it is important. All of it is important. There's a reason it comes into your memory. A lot of times as children, we don't understand what a big deal the trauma is in the moment because our brains are very underdeveloped. We don't have a very big understanding of the world. We cannot understand the impact of what's going on or the implications of what's going on. So, looking at the past with a fresh set of adult eyes, you will see things differently if you allow yourself to. If you allow yourself to not just look through the vision of the child, but if you step back and go, ooh, if you put yourself in a different position, if you're like, okay, well, if I was the parent or if I was the grandparent or whoever you're interacting with and seeing it through that perspective, it really can change things a lot and it can bring about healing for you. Let's see. Be mindful to not be critical of what you feel or how strongly you feel it. Events that happened in early childhood and early adulthood are oftentimes do not register. This is what I mentioned. They don't register in full to the person experiencing them. And that's part of a survival response because if you if you could fully register how detrimental those events were in the moment, that would be harmful for you because as a child, how do I explain this? So, as a child, you are completely vulnerable to whatever household you live in, right? Like, you don't have a job, you have no understanding of the world, you can't just pack your bags and leave. Like, you are basically at the mercy of whatever household you've been born into and whatever family members you have. Um, if you grew up in an abusive situation or a situation where there's neglect in one way or another, for you can't register that in the moment because if you do, you'd be like, "Oh my gosh, I can't be here. I shouldn't be here. This is like really bad." But you have to be there because you're a child. So some of you may have recognized in the moment, I need to get the heck out of here and I can't. Um, and others of you as a survival response were like, no, everything's fine. This is okay. Like this sucks, but no, this is normal. We're happy. We're a happy family. This is good. And you were also maybe the ones who didn't recognize it were probably also coached to be told, no, we're a happy family. Everything's great. So there's that too. Okay, let me pull back up my notes. Identify lies that you may have started believing as a result of your trauma. And I've talked about this in other videos too. So it may take some work to identify these lies. So some of some of the lies that could have come up for you, it could include things like believing that you are helpless or incompetent, believing that you are responsible for solving other people's problems, believing you have something to be guilty or ashamed of, believing that you are inherently like bad or unlovable, or fears that having healthy boundaries will cause you to lose relationships. So, all of those things are lies. So, if those ring true to you, then you know that that's something to dig into deeper to help heal. It is important to identify these lies because these must be replaced with the truth. For every lie you have believed about yourself, take a new, higher perspective on the events in your life to see the truth. So, Metatron actually gave me some examples of like lies versus truth. So, he gave this to me for a reason. This is for somebody. Um, so, you might tell yourself a lie, something like, I'm not lovable. Even my mother didn't love me. The truth is that you deserved love, and your mother didn't give that to you because of her own wounding, not because there was something wrong with you. Here's another lie. I should have stopped my father from touching me sexually. I knew it was wrong. Here's the truth. You are never responsible for the choices of another person. Period. You have no responsibility for someone else abusing you. The responsibility for that is 100% on whoever was doing it. Another lie. I can't do anything right. I always mess everything up. Truth. Everyone makes mistakes. Mistakes are natural and expected. Mistakes are required to give you the opportunity to learn that you have a preference for a different choice in the future. So the next step is to review your emotions towards those who caused you pain. It is expected that there will be pain, anger, hatred, or even apathy. It is important to heal these emotions because they are like poison. If left within the body, they will continue to cause you suffering until you can transmute them. The next step, the last step really, transcend your suffering with those who have harmed you. So many of you may have already done some really deep digging into your past. You already know all the labels for your family members. You already examined all of the ways they wounded you. You already cried about it. You've already been mad about it. You've done everything you possibly can to try to move forward from it. So this is the final step, and this is the step that most of us skip. And this is the gold right here. This is the part of the experience that we do the experience for. So this is the most important part. So please, if you haven't done this, please consider this. Transcend your suffering with those who have harmed you. So this is a spiritually advanced concept, but it is obtainable for everyone who approaches this process with an open heart. This process may look different from person to person, but certain components will likely be present. So the first component of knowing that you have transcended the suffering is mercy or compassion for the person who caused you the suffering. So again, this is huge. This is monumental spiritual work. This is not like, oh, that's easy. I'll just get that done. It takes inner work like nothing else to come to that place. So this is not necessarily about expressing something to that other person. Like, this is not about you going to them and saying, like, I forgive you. Like, it's not about that. This is part of the journey of bringing closure and wisdom to yourself. Realizing that our neglected or abusive parents were oftentimes also neglected or abused is sometimes what helps us find understanding in how they behaved. Other times, bad behavior is fueled by an addiction to drugs or alcohol, which, if you look at what an addiction is a coping mechanism to emotions that feel overwhelming. Having mercy or compassion for those who have hurt you is not about excusing their behavior. It is about recognizing that all of us are human and all of us make bad choices at times. Sometimes it is in a person's soul contract to play the bad guy. And so they play the bad guy, sometimes for the whole lifetime, sometimes just in a specific situation for us. And it's in order to give an opportunity to us for spiritual growth and healing. What occurs in your current lifetime is oftentimes a repeat of the trauma from past lifetimes that has yet to be healed. So, the second component to transcending your hurt is understanding how that painful event was an opportunity for you to grow in love, compassion, or understanding. And this is no easier than you having mercy or compassion for the one who harmed you, right? It's a very, very difficult task that takes a lot of spiritual maturity. And I'm not asking any of you to go into it and to enjoy the process or to like it or to be like, oh, yeah, this is easy. No, 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 no. We're doing growth here. So spiritual growth is about going into the places where we're uncomfortable and we're kind of like, I hate it here. I hate this. I don't, because we're a human being. We don't want to change. We don't want to grow. I don't know what that is about, but there's a resistance to it. But being willing to go into that place and dig around and search for answers and search for meaning, despite some part of you being like, no, I don't want to do this. That is how you're going to grow. So you just your willingness to look for these answers, that is growth. You finding the answers, that is massive success. Let's see. It can take months or years to come to a full understanding of the value. A lot of times, especially with really traumatic stuff that happened a long time ago when we were children or teenagers, um, a lot of the times it takes 10, 20, 30, 40 years of space from the event to start figuring it out, to start making sense of it. It's, if you had something very traumatic happen to you this year, I don't expect anyone to find meaning in that while they're still in the grieving portion. So make sure that you have completed your grieving and your processing of your emotions to the best of your ability before you start trying to look for meaning to it. Because I don't think it's reasonable to expect somebody to um, have compassion when compassion for the person who hurt them, when really they need to feel the anger and they need to feel the sadness. And you can't honestly feel those if you're trying to look for compassion for that person. So just make sure you're allowing yourself to take what time you need to process things first. Keep losing my spot on my notes. Okay. The process of opening your heart up to the truth is what will transform your suffering and expand your heart. If you could use support with generational trauma that you believe is generational and is not ancestral, so it could be things like rage, anxiety, addiction, abuse. All of those could be ancestral too, to be honest with you. If you think you have a generational trauma issue, we do have a service. It's called Generational Healing Channeled Meditation. So this is a different service from the Ancestral Healing. This is a meditation that's designed to help you connect with where this trauma is in order to release it. So it's not it's not a service that has a Zoom call. It is a service that we do energy work on you to repair your DNA and clear your chakras. So if either of those services resonate with you, let us know. If you have a question, if you are like, hey, I have this situation in my family, would the ancestral healing be a good choice for me? Would the generational, what do we call this? Would the generational healing, channeled meditation, be a good choice for me? You can ask us if you are curious which one would work better for you. You could do both of them, to be honest with you. If you do both of them, they'll end up addressing different things. The ancestral will take the greatest ancestral trauma for you, and the generational will address any and all generational healing that can be brought forward. So those are services to help support you, but I really, really strongly encourage you to look at your own trauma, because there's always gonna be a very large chunk of trauma that can only be resolved by you processing it, by you feeling the emotions, by you taking the time to try to transmute the suffering. Like nobody else can transmute your suffering for you. We have to, each of us, we have to all do that really hard work on our own to get there. It's completely worth it. But that part, just always keep in mind that that's always something that we all need to be working on kind of constantly, is healing ourselves, because there's always something that needs healing, because we're doing so much work in this lifetime. We're doing this lifetime, we're doing the past lifetimes, we're doing this family member, we're doing our ancestors. Like, we came here as light workers and star seeds with these massive ambitions, and rightfully so, because the soul sees no limitations. The soul is like, yes, we can fix this. Yes, we can heal this. Of course we can. The soul is like, yeah, put me in that family. I can't wait to be the person to finally break this line of trauma. I can't wait to be the person to finally heal and not have things moving forward to my children or my grandchildren. So yeah, so we came here very ambitiously, and we need to get more into that mindset, because massive change is possible, is what he says. Massive change is possible. It's our human minds that are like, are you sure? But the work that you do internally, the work that you do to heal yourself and transmute your suffering, it might feel small to you, it might feel massive to you, but it is, I don't even have a word for it. It impacts everything, is what he makes me feel like. He's just showing me like dominoes that go back out, forwards and backwards, up and down. Like, there are huge repercussions for all of our choices. So anytime we're choosing healing and more love, that radiates out and it extends out, and it impacts so much more than we can understand. So, okay, I'm going to put links for both of the services in the description. Let us know if you have questions. You can email us, send us our contact form if you want to ask us about one of the services. If you ask in the comments, I'll answer you too, but email, it works also. Okay, guys, this is what I have for you. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.